Bills Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame show, we will be breaking down what we expect to see from the Buffalo Bills today as they take on the Seattle Seahawks. Injury updates, key matchups, our pregame superlatives are all coming up. But first,
Welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour pregame show. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at the Bills Guys, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. And Dave, today on the Air Raid Hour pregame show presented by the Cover One Sports Network, we are breaking down an NFC West matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. I think the number one kind of like non-injury, non-sort of matchup-based conversation or talking point about this game is that stadium that the Buffalo Bills have to travel out west to play in. A lot of manufactured crowd noise in that stadium. Going to be very difficult for the Buffalo Bills to communicate, and one of the biggest factors in this game.
Yeah, this Seattle team's tough. Always difficult place to play there, Lumen Field. The 12, as they call themselves, are going to be pretty loud and amped up for this game after Seattle had that big win against Atlanta last week. It's been sunny here where I live for about 2 weeks straight. And today it is cold and raining, and it just feels like, is that an omen about Seattle or what? I don't know, but man,
It's 96 degrees today in Phoenix, so
yeah. So this is a good test for the Bills. We're gonna get into some of the deeper dive matchups and statistics here, but this is a game I feel a little bit uneasy about, and I know that we're gonna kind of see, and probably in the comments section, a wide range of people that are quite confident, and maybe some people that aren't quite confident. I think you'll see a lot of wide range of opinion going into this game. I'm feeling a bit uneasy about this game. Does not mean, obviously, that the Bills can't go in and get the win, but I think it's going to be, if the Bills come out of this game with a win, it is going to be well earned, and we're going to feel really good about leaving Seattle with a win.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't want to say low pressure game because in the National Football League, with only 17 of them, none of them are really low pressured until like you're out of the playoff race. But at the same time, the Bills have a 2.5 game lead in the AFC East, and this is an NFC game. So even a loss today wouldn't sting too much. You'd still be up pretty significantly in the AFC East, depending on how some of the other AFC East teams do today. And it's an NFC loss. But at the same time, if you're the Bills and you're looking at the AFC playoff picture and you're seeing all these teams sitting at 5-2 and the Chiefs at 6-0, you got to keep stacking these wins if you want to be in consideration at the end of the year for that number one overall seed. Today might be a barometer of whether the Buffalo Bills are serious contenders for that number one seed, because if you want to be the number one seed, these are the kind of games that you want to win, going out west on the road, stacking that 6th win. Those are the kind of things you want to do if you want to be a one seed.
Absolutely. And look, the Chiefs, we've talked about them before, and they have quite what appears to be a fairly easy road ahead, and they obviously haven't lost yet either. So look, if the Bills then drop this game, they go down to 3 losses, nothing's impossible. But then you, like you said, you have a bunch of these other teams that are 5-2 as well. Obviously, priority number one is to win the division. So that's key. That'll guarantee you a home game come playoff time. But the higher seed you can get, obviously you want those games in Buffalo if you can kind of get past that first round and beyond. So it matters more in the bigger picture, I think, than it does for like how we're going to react maybe for this one game after this week. But it would be nice to kind of go into that Miami game next week, 6-2, a road win, some
Mhm.
momentum, and who knows, could kind of springboard the Bills into some kind of winning streak. A type of win like this on the road could really give the Bills
Mhm.
confidence going into this next stretch of games.
Just saying comes in, and I kind of like this question, so I want to address it before we get into all the other stuff because this is more maybe big picture than like game specific. But he says, "Why can't Buffalo cover over the middle of the football field?" And this was a topic of conversation. If you had a chance to listen to Disguise coverage this week, Anth did a great job booking his guest, Mina Kimes. What an awesome gift for him! Second time she's been on his show, and one of the talking points they had was whichever team dominates the middle of the football field in this game is probably going to win because neither team defends the middle of the football field very well. But I think the very layman's way of describing why the Buffalo Bills can't cover over the middle of the field, number one, Terrell Bernard has been in and out of the lineup. So Balon Spector has been playing some middle linebacker. At the end of the day, he is a backup caliber player, and that's probably part of why the Buffalo Bills struggle. And the second thing is that we had Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer for years at safety. And
Mhm.
not going to sit here and trash Taylor Rapp or DeMar Hamlin because I think they have done an adequate job in that role. However, they are not Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, who had years and years and years in this Buffalo Bills system. And the Bills ask their safeties to do a lot. So whether you think the Bills need to upgrade at safety or it's just going to take time, either way, the newness at safety, the in and out of the lineup of Terrell Bernard, I think have all contributed to the Buffalo Bills struggle over the middle of the football field.
It has, and we were we were spoiled.
Teron Johnson too. Teron Johnson too.
Absolutely. We were spoiled for those years with Hyde and Poyer, and then we kind of have this new group. There's some, background with obviously with Hamlin and him having played before, and then he goes through that, that hugely devastating injury to come all the way back, and that's, great story. But like at the same time, what is he giving you on the football field?
Mhm.
Taylor Rapp, same way. Former second round pick has kind of been, and I think the word you used was perfect, adequate. These guys are adequate. They're probably not like bench caliber players, but they're probably not like they're not high end starting
Mhm.
caliber players, right? They're middle of the road starting caliber, maybe slightly lower than middle of the road starting caliber safeties in the NFL, which that means they're good players, they're adequate players, but they're not what we are used to, I think, with Hyde and Poyer. And we were spoiled with those guys for so many years. So I think there's a little bit of perspective here we need to take. And I'm not saying we shouldn't like expect more or continuously look for improvement at every position, but there also has to be, I think, a little bit of realization that like you're not always going to have the best players at every single position
Mhm.
on your roster starting for you. And this is just an
Yeah.
area where the Bills are going through changes.
I mean, ask Kansas City Chiefs. Like every team's going to have a weakness. You just got to figure out where your weaknesses are, and you got to figure out how to hide them. Because the Chiefs have
Mhm.
done a really good job at that over the last 2 years, and they've won 2 Super Bowls because their coaching staff has gone out, figured out where their weaknesses are in season, and had the ability to mask those weaknesses. So the Buffalo Bills need to figure out a way to mask where they are maybe less efficient than in other places as well. And that's something that'll happen over the course of a season. Hopefully by the end of the season, the Buffalo Bills have figured that out. But the middle of the field is something that they definitely need to work on, their defense over the middle of the field. All right, let's talk a little bit about injuries and weather because I think both of these things are going
Mhm.
to play a role in today's game. Looking at the weather specifically, mid to upper 50s, which is not too bad, but 15-mile-an-hour winds with gusts between 25 and 30 miles an hour. So there could be some pretty significant winds in this game in Seattle and intermittent precipitation throughout the game. So weather could play a significant role in this football game, whether it's special teams, whether it's ball security, whether it's both teams maybe wanting to pass a little bit, but having to go to the ground a little bit more because of the conditions that they'll see on the football field.
Conditions you'll see, and I think that'll also add up to, we've talked about this at times before as well with the Bills and their opponents, a little more aggressive approach on fourth downs as you kind of creep over onto the opponent's side of the field or really generally around midfield. This is a Seattle team that has given up over 400 yards of offense on average over their last 4 games. They've given up over 30 points per game on average over their last 4 games. So you could see the Bills as well
Mhm.
being a little bit more aggressive in going for it on fourth downs if the wind and the rain do play a factor in this one. Although I will say Tyler Bass coming off a good game, it'll be interesting to see how the Bills maybe approach a good game from Tyler Bass into their confidence
Mhm.
level into this game and when they're willing to trot him out there potentially for some field goals. So that's something I'll be paying attention to as well, the decision making on fourth downs in this game and how the wind is affecting that. Because we saw like in that Jets game 2 weeks ago, the wind in MetLife certainly was a factor for both kickers, and that one could be a factor today.
Yeah, Scott Blakely coming in saying, "Is it just me? But the last few years, I feel like we've had more wind and rain games, no matter where."
Not the Detroit Lions, remember?
Yeah, you know what? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just like during the drought era, we just really don't remember because we just didn't care. We had no hope to begin with. So when the weather affects your hope, then you're like, oh, okay, I notice it. Or affects like a competitive team, you're like, oh shoot, like. But I think when it maybe affects like a non-competitive team, you're like, whatever, it's just weather. Injuries also going to play a significant role in this football game. Seattle out. Right tackle Abraham Lucas and their swing tackle George Font activated off or not activated off IR, so he will not be available. Doubtful DK Metcalf and Cameron Young. I think like 2% of doubtful players have played over the past 7 years.
Yeah.
Banged up Bills went and did the research on that. So maybe DCAF will go and be a decoy and play some snaps, but not expecting too much from DK Metcalf today if he goes. Questionable and expected to play Trey Brown, Nehemiah Pritchett, and Mike Morris. The big one is DK Metcalf. Expect a heavy dose of Kenneth Walker in this football game. And Kenneth Walker is a name that's going to come up a ton in this pregame show.
Kenneth Walker, maybe also Zach Charbonnet. I mean, Kenneth Walker, 14 attempts in his last 2 games. He's only averaging 46 yards on the ground actually per game. And we know he missed 2 games as well in the middle stretch of that. But he's really a guy that 7 touchdowns for them combined. And while his yardage totals haven't been there, we saw at times last weekend Tony Pollard having some nice runs up the middle of this Bills defense. That's really where the Bills got hurt the most in the run game against the Titans was up the middle with Tony Pollard. And so it's a big game for this Bills interior. Balon Spector, Dorian Williams, as you mentioned, coming downhill, playing the run is going to be big. Kenneth Walker, if I was the Seahawks, I'd be giving him 20 plus carries in this game and then mixing in Charbonnet. But yeah, Kenneth Walker, I think for me right now with no DK becomes the focal point of stopping this Seattle offense.
Yeah, you got Charles G coming in saying, I like the matchup of the Buffalo Bills defense versus Seattle offensive line. Ed and co need to eat. Brendan P coming in saying Groot gonna eat. Charles G comes in with a grimace face, Seahawks right tackle. That's the other big injury in this game is you have 6th-round rookie Mike Jarrell starting at right tackle. We've had this conversation on the show about Gregory Rousseau. He'll have a big game and then he'll disappear for a month. He'll have a big game and then he'll disappear for a month. Just like last week, we need a second consecutive dominant week from Gregory Rousseau. He's probably, and if not, we're going to have a problem with the coaching staff in this game, right? He's probably going to be lined up across from Mike Jarrell. He should be lined up across from Mike Jarrell, and he's got to take advantage of that.
He's got to take advantage of that. And on the injury front as well, we talk about the defensive line for the Bills. Dwayne Carter being out is a big blow, as well as he's been playing an ascending player. So Groot needs to step up for the 2nd game in a row. And Ed Oliver, I think, needs to make an impact today with no Dwayne Carter. You would expect that Ed Oliver would be the guy to make that impact with no Dwayne Carter, but Dwayne Carter maybe had been outplaying him a little bit in the last couple games. So it's a big day for Groot to put a consecutive good game together against that backup right tackle for Seattle. And also on the injury front with no Dwayne Carter, Ed Oliver is going to have to step up. It's a big, big day for this Bills defensive line.
Speaking of the Bills, their injuries, you already mentioned one, Dwayne Carter placed on injured reserve. The Bills have not made a corresponding move. They could bring Darrington Evans up to the active roster, or they could make some kind of move. They'll likely make a move on Monday or Tuesday of next week since they haven't made one yet, unless they make the decision to do so today. Out is Terrell Bernard and Curtis Samuel. Jalen Virgil and Eli Anku have been called up from the practice squad. Eli Anku is going to take the place of Dwayne Carter. Jalen Virgil, not KJ Hamler, not Tyrell Shavers, is going to take the place of Curtis Samuel. The loss of Bernard really stings, though, because as we mentioned, Seattle has some running backs. It might not be Pete Carroll anymore, and them trying to run the ball 40 times a game, but they still have some running backs. And the Buffalo Bills, the middle of the field is going to be a lot tougher to cover without Terrell Bernard, both in the passing game and in the running game.
Yeah, and Seattle has been using Kenneth Walker a lot in the passing game this year, and he's been capable in years past. It wasn't necessarily his strong suit coming out of college. He didn't have the college production, but there was always the the possibility and the thought that he could develop into that 3-down type of back that could also catch passes, and he's on pace to have his most career receptions as a running back this year. So they have been using him in the passing game, and if they start to use Kenneth Walker as well in the passing game over the middle of the field, that worries me a bit. Like I said, he's going to be the focal point between him and JSN over the middle. Noah Fant could be a threat as well over the middle of the field. The Bills have allowed quite a bit of receptions to tight ends this year, and we saw last week the Titans kind of nickel and dime the Bills with multiple tight ends. So that middle of the field is really important. And Spin comes in with the comment here. Sorry,
Yep.
I just saw
No,
it.
you're good.
The Bills add someone today, then we need to get rid of someone tomorrow to make room for Vaughn. I think based on
That's a good
that, we're
point.
probably not going to see a move until Monday. And so we'll see. But yeah, the middle of the field it's making me nervous, I will say right now.
You mentioned Kenneth Walker and how they're using him more in the passing game. The Bills are 31st in DVOA in the passing game when it comes to the ball getting passed to the running back. So
Yeah.
not a great matchup for the Buffalo Bills defense, especially sans Terrell Bernard. But before we start talking even more about Kenneth Walker and that Seattle offense, let's talk about the Buffalo Bills offense and this Seattle Seahawks defense. It's a new defense. Mike McDonald in town from Baltimore, bringing a new approach, a new look to the Seattle football team. They have a new linebacker this week opposite Tyrell Dodson in Ernest Jones, who the Buffalo Bills just saw last week playing for the Tennessee Titans, getting into a little drawing match with Josh Allen. So we get 2 weeks of that. They got guys like Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed up front. They have some really good young pass rushers in Derek Hall and Boye Mafe, who just absolutely wreaked havoc on Kirk Cousins last week. And then in the secondary, they have some good players too, in Witherspoon and Reek Woolen and Julian Love and Kobe Bryant and Trey Brown. What does the DVOA tell us about this Seattle defense? I know you gave us some raw statistics earlier on in the show about how they have been sort of reeling the past couple of weeks, but what does the DVOA say about the Seattle defense?
Yeah, before we get in that, I remember when Reek Woolen was still Tariq Woolen in the pre-draft process. I really liked him. Big corner, fits Seattle well. Anyway, the DVOA, past DVOA, they are 14th. I should say overall defense, they're 15th. Past DVOA, they are 14th against the pass, and they're actually 14th in overall raw statistics against the pass. So the DVOA is aligning here. They've played some good passing offenses with the Lions, 49ers, Falcons, and also have played a few bad passing offenses in the Dolphins, Broncos, Giants, and Patriots. So it's a bit of a mixed bag for Seattle. Like past D, they're right there in the middle of the pack, and it shows in both the raw statistics and in the DVOA. Now, when you start to dive in a little bit to their individual matchups on DVOA against wide receivers. So they're 20th against wide receiver ones, 23rd wide receiver twos, 26th wide receiver threes, 21st against tight ends, but they're 7th against defending running backs out of the backfield as pass catchers. So across the board, slightly below average against defending the perimeter weapons here in the wide receiver group. But like you said, they have gotten a little bit healthier. Trey Brown expected to play today. But they haven't been great at covering the tight end over the middle of the field. Kyle Pitts with some impact. George Kittle, we saw have 2 touchdowns 2 weeks ago when they played. Pitts was 7 for 65 last week. Kittle was 5 for 58 the week before with 2 TDs on top of that. So 21st in DVOA against the tight end. We keep asking for a big Dalton Kincaid game. We saw the hint of that happening last week. He had probably, I think it was his best yardage game of the season, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me on that last week. But good at defending the running backs out of the backfield. So I think this is a game where the passing attack's probably going to have to go through Dalton Kincaid again. But yeah, middle of the road, pass D. Then we get to the rush D. They're 17th against the rush. This is where it gets really interesting because they're 5th worst in the NFL raw statistics against the run, allowing 146.1 a game versus 17th in DVOA. So the DVOA is really favoring the Seahawks here by about 13 to 14 spots. They have faced some really good rushing offenses this year. They've also been without Byron Murphy the second for a few games. He's in today. He's been playing well since he's been back in the lineup. They played 2 top 7 rushing offenses in the Lions and Niners. And then they've also played a couple others that are in the top half. Dolphins 11th, Broncos 13th, Falcons 16th. But over the last 3 games, the Seahawks have allowed 175 yards to the Giants, 228 to the Niners, and 155 to the Falcons on the ground. So the rush D, it's going to be an area I think that the Bills maybe will want to test, I would say. So the DVOA, it's a little bit kinder to the Seahawks, putting them slightly out of the middle of the pack, but they're 5th worst in raw statistics. I would test that run D today if I was the Bills. I know Byron Murphy's back, but this has got to be, I think, a day where James Cook, Ray Davis tandem becomes a focal point.
Yeah, I mean, Ernest Jones, they made that move in large part because of their run defense, and they wanted to improve their run defense. They want to move Tyrel Dotson to his more natural position of weak side linebacker. You now have Ernest Jones in the middle of that defense, but you're still catching them in transition because he's been there for like all of 4 or 5 days. I would expect for the Buffalo Bills today a heavy dose of Alec Anderson, and I would expect a heavy dose of early rundowns. I wonder, I also wonder maybe if this could end up being sort of like a James Cook, Ray Davis, almost 50-50 game where they ride the hot hand, because I really expect the Buffalo Bills to emphasize, and the weather conditions as well, the running game, even though Josh Allen is weatherproof, right? Because you want to stay out of those obvious passing situations. Charles G comes in and says Hall and Mafe off the edge are playing really well. Tough test for Dawkins and Brown. The better they run the ball, the better the Buffalo Bills run the ball, the less likely they are to get into those 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11 type of situations where Hall and Mafe can pin their ears back and really cause havoc and make Josh Allen have to get creative back there. So if you're the Buffalo Bills and you're Joe Brady, I expect a heavy dose of the running game today.
Yeah, I would as well. And if you start to look at some of the, the key indicators on the defensive side of the ball for Seattle, they have 6 guys on the team with at least 2 sacks. So they can come at you with multiple players. They're 8th in the NFL in sacks overall as a team, even though they only have 4 interceptions on the season, which is bottom 3rd. And they have the 7th worst turnover differential in the NFL at -3. They have been able to get to the quarterback. So while on the back end, maybe the coverage hasn't been there and they're not necessarily taking the ball away, they are doing it on the front end with sacks. And so that is a really good point made there in the comments section. We need to make sure those edges are taken care of in this game. And by doing that, taking them out of the game through game script or through the game plan, that would be something that I would focus on if I was the Bills.
Just more 13 comes in and says, and please use the play action, fellows. Yeah, I would agree. The Buffalo Bills are one of the better play action teams in the league, yet they run play action less than any team in the National Football League. So if you're Joe Brady, that's one of the things that I don't know why they're not doing it, because they're so effective in doing it, but they have to do it more, especially in a game like today where you want to attack the middle of the football field, especially today when, again, Charles G makes a great comment that the Titans DC is from Mike McDonald tree. So it's probably not a big adjustment for Jones, but it's still Tyrel Dotson moving to a new linebacker spot. Again, it's a spot that he's played before. A new guy coming in who's only been here for 4 or 5 days. There's going to be some communication issues, right? You need to put those linebackers in conflict, and you put those linebackers in conflict by utilizing play action, by making them think, is it pass? Is it run? Making them have to make those kind of split-second decisions. Put those linebackers in conflict If the Buffalo Bills go another half of football like they did last week without running play action, I'm not going to have hair on the post-game show. Like, it's going to be all ripped out of my head. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, I don't know what the issue is, but whatever the issue is, fix it, because you're an effective play action team and you need to run it more.
Yeah, and you kind of get into this situation where you talk about, well, like, are they effective because they don't run it as much? Is there such a? It would be interesting to see maybe like the usage rate of play action for teams versus their success rate, right? Is there a point of diminishing return where the overuse of play action and then your success rate maybe starts to dip? But I don't think the Bills are even close to that yet, because as you mentioned, they don't use it like they use it almost infrequently as any team in the NFL. So I'd test it a bit more, right? See if you can use it a bit more, if that actually helps you. And if there's a point of diminishing return, at least try to see if it's going to be something that you can continue to work on. So I think that play action game with Kincaid, as we mentioned, with the games that some of these tight ends have had against the Seahawks defense in recent weeks, Pitts and Kittle notably, it should set up well for Dalton Kincaid if the Bills decide to use a little bit more play action.
In terms of the passing game, Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, the offense funnels through those four now, in my opinion. I think you agree with me as well. I think you need to see, again, another week where 70 to 80% of Josh Allen's passing attempts needs to be going to those four guys.
Yeah, I think that another week with Amari Cooper in the building, we saw him obviously make a big splash in his first game against the Titans, who came in with the number one pass D in the NFL yardage wise. The Seattle pass D, a little bit more susceptible to giving up bigger plays than maybe the Titans were. So it was a nice little, a nice little test last week, and see if that momentum can continue. I agree with you. It needs to funnel through those guys. We just talked about how the DVOA is 20 plus against wide receivers and tight ends for the Seattle defense. And so, I mean, pick your poison if you're the Bills. I think you have options in this game. This is something that maybe we haven't necessarily had going back to the beginning of the season. Is like, yes, we had options with this sort of everybody eats mentality, but it wasn't like you felt great about the, you didn't really feel too great about the overall landscape. And I think the infusion of Amari Cooper is really, as we talked about, moving everyone down the depth chart one. It makes a big difference now. And I think the Bills now have enough to force Seattle into some difficult decision makings when it comes to their coverage or personnel packages, because now the Bills really can, with the emergence of Coleman as well, Shakir being healthy, Cooper another week in, it's starting to hopefully line up for some momentum for this Bills passing attack.
And Amari Cooper could be huge for the Buffalo Bills today, because I think this is going to be a nice test for these receivers. These Seattle corners are going to play you physical at the line of scrimmage. They're probably going to play a little bit more man-to-man. We saw the Bills struggle with it against the Ravens and really not have an answer for it against the Ravens. So seeing if wide receivers can create separation today, right? Dalton Kincaid gets matched up on Devin Witherspoon. Can he create separation? Guys like Amari Cooper, can they create separation? Keon Coleman, et cetera. So it'll be interesting, because if they can't, it could actually end up being, despite the DVOA and what the DVOA tells us, it could end up being a long day for this Buffalo Bills defense if these receivers can't create any separation, if they're bullied a little bit at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and I mean, like last week, the Seattle defense only gave up 214 passing yards to Atlanta in a game where Atlanta was trailing most of that game. So to still only allow 214, pretty impressive. They've actually haven't allowed a 300-yard passing offense yet so far this season.
We said that about the Titans hadn't allowed a 200-yard passer, and Josh Allen had 315 last week. So
it's true. But if you look at the trend, right, first 3 weeks, Seattle. Now, granted, this was against Denver, New England, Miami. They allowed 150
gauntlet
less, 50 or less. Then they play the Lions, Giants, Niners, Falcons, some better passing offenses outside the Giants, we'll say, and they've allowed 270, 250, 215 last week. I think the Seattle pass D does come in with a little bit of confidence, though, after what they did in Atlanta last week. So, like you said, going to be physical. I think that could also maybe open some lanes up for Josh Allen as far as him taking off with the ball as well. Guys' backs are turned to him. He can thrive in those types of situations where we didn't really see him do that against the Ravens in a similar coverage. So, and Charles G comes in as we start to maybe talk about the rushing game a bit more. I need
Yeah.
more Ray Davis in my life.
I have a little preview of my superlatives today. I think this could end up being a game where Ray Davis outgains James Cook.
Wouldn't surprise me.
If
Wouldn't
he
surprise me.
gets the ball early and he gets rolling, or the Buffalo Bills run game struggles early with James Cook and they put Ray Davis in, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a game where the Buffalo Bills ride the hot hand and the hot hand is Ray Davis, or if they just get both running backs extremely involved. It wouldn't surprise me if this was like a true 50-50 game at the end of the day for Ray Davis and James Cook. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to emphasize running the football, controlling the line of scrimmage, trying to get second and shorts, third and short type situations, not letting Derek Hall and Boye Mafe go crazy. So to me, Ray Davis, James Cook, stock up if you have these guys in fantasy, because I think both of them will be very involved today.
I really like Ray Davis's style for this type of game. Seattle's going to be physical both on defense and with their own back and Kenneth Walker. You need to try to match that a bit if you're the Bills. You cannot be, we've seen the Bills in big games in the past, maybe more so in playoff games, where they've kind of like, they haven't matched the physicality of their opponents at times. And so this team has, I don't want it. They're not a finesse team. So that's not what I'm trying to say, but like there have certainly been times where the Bills haven't matched the physicality. So that's why it was like nice last week to see Dalton Kincaid with a little bit of an angry run. Ray Davis, to me, can set a bit of a more physical tone than maybe James Cook can. But that doesn't mean James Cook isn't going to get his in this game. I think you're going to need both of these guys in this game. And it could end up being a 2 versus 1 where you have James Cook and Ray Davis versus Kenneth Walker on the other side, who can be more productive. And then maybe Zach Charbonnet could be the wild card for Seattle.
All right, let's shift our focus now to the Buffalo Bills defense versus this Seattle Seahawks offense. You got Geno Smith coming in with the most passing attempts per game in the NFL. The Buffalo Bills are 29th in surrendering receptions allowed this season. Weather and the loss of DK Metcalf, if he doesn't go, could change some things for how Seattle wants to operate. But what does the DVOA tell us about this Seattle Seahawks offense?
Yeah, it's interesting on Geno Smith, right? He's the most passing attempts, most passing yards in the league, or fifth in passing yards now after last week. But he only has 6 passing touchdowns, which is tied for 20th in the league. So the DVOA here, it's 10s across the board. They're 10th overall offense, 10th in passing, 10th in rushing. A good, solid offense for Seattle Seahawks. So while they're the number 1 passing yardage offense per game, DVOA only has them 10th. So what is the reason? Well, few of their opponents have been of the lesser quality passing defenses. Lions and Patriots are not good passing defenses. The 49ers game, while they have a good passing defense, they were losing in that game and playing at home and playing a lot of catch up. So they got some yards there. And I think the DVOA is recognizing the fact that they were coming back in that one. Rushing is where, again, gets interesting. So we saw the interesting kind of contrast with DVOA on the defensive side of the ball with rushing. Same on the offensive side of the ball. The Seattle Seahawks, 6th worst offense in the NFL in raw stats, rushing 10th overall in DVOA. So a huge disparity here. But again, just like the Seahawks have played a lot of good rushing offenses, they've also played a lot of good rushing defenses this year, including the Lions, who are 5th best, Broncos 10th best, Niners 12th best, and Dolphins 17th best. They were also missing Kenneth Walker for 2 games, and they had 2 games where they only rushed for 46 and 52 yards, respectively. Kenneth Walker missed that Patriots game. So that was notable given that Patriots rushing D really hasn't been good, but the Seahawks were missing Kenneth Walker, and they've otherwise cleared over 100 rushing yards in every other game this season. So the DVOA here is certainly telling you that this is a much better running team than the raw statistics would lead you to believe. And I think we all kind of agree with that feeling we have, the fear or the respect of Kenneth Walker in this running game against this Bills defense.
I'm still having visions. I'm just having visions of Breece Hall. Like Jets not even doing anything creative. Just just dumping the ball off to Breece Hall and him just going ham on this defense. Like I just have visions of that, and that's my that's my biggest fear. Right? I'm just that every week is that the other team is just simply going to dump the ball off, not even get creative, just dump the ball off to playmakers like Breece Hall, and Seattle has one in Kenneth Walker, and they're just going to make plays on this defense because they've been brutal against running backs this year.
Yeah, and again, this is one where you really can't look at the raw stats. I know I mentioned it at the top of the show. Kenneth Walker's only averaging 46 yards per game, and this is a lot why Seattle has not looked.
Breece Hall was on the brink of getting benched for Braylon Allen when he went off against the Buffalo Bills.
Exactly, and the other thing with this, right, is that Geno Smith really he's run for 146 yards so far this year, 7 yards per attempt. So he's being a bit more selective with when he's taking off. And he had that huge run at the end of the Giants game, which kind of inflated his overall rushing stats. I think that was like a 30 or 40-yard run. So outside of that, he hasn't run as much as he has in past years. So this is a game where Kenneth Walker on the ground, Geno Smith scrambling, Charbonnet as well, right? Like maybe they also mix in, who knows? Maybe they mix in some jet type of stuff for Jackson Smith and Jigma in this game. You've got to be really careful if you're the Bills about this Seattle running attack. A huge like benefit to the Bills, obviously, if DK doesn't play in this game, because then maybe you can focus your efforts more there. Carl comes in and says Geno likes to throw to the outside hashes. Could be a game where Rasul and Christian get some INTs. And you want to see maybe if they change their game plan up without DK, if they try to work the middle of the field more knowing there's no Terrell Bernard there, right, in the middle of the field. Maybe they mix up their game plan with the personnel they have and Lockett and Jigba, Fant over the middle of the field, Kenneth Walker out of the backfield over the middle of the field. I would still be very concerned.
It's one of the things that I brought up Carl's comment there because one of the things I had in my show notes was a lot on the shoulders of Balin Spector. And we've talked about Kenneth Walker, the runner and the receiver. Balin Spector's going to have his hands full. Dorian Williams too, but Balin Spector specifically because he'll be in the middle of the field. Whether it's Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet on the ground or dropping back into pass coverage, a lot on the shoulders of Balin Spector. And that's not a very good feeling. No offense to Balin Spector if you're a Bills fan, that a backup player just has so much responsibility and weight on his shoulder. Seattle does. Seattle's very good at throwing over the middle of the field and working the middle of the field. They are. But kind of like the Buffalo Bills with play action, they don't do it a ton because, as Carl pointed out, Geno Smith likes throwing to the boundary for whatever reason. So the Buffalo Bills have been, it's been like a barren wasteland for NFL offenses trying to attack the Buffalo Bills on the boundary, right? With Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas absolutely shutting those receivers down and eliminating that part of the football field for offenses. So if Geno tries to attack there, I'll be thrilled because you are attacking the strength of this Buffalo Bills defense and completely ignoring the weakness. And Mina Kimes on Disguise Coverage on that pregame show, they pretty much said whoever decides to attack the middle of the field and whoever attacks the middle of the field better is going to win this football game. And I would agree with that statement. You have a new middle linebacker in Seattle and Ernest Jones, who's been there for 4 or 5 days, and you have a backup middle linebacker in Balin Spector for the Buffalo Bills. So both offensive coordinators should be keying on those dudes and trying to make plays over the middle of the football field.
Yeah, and as far as the Bills defense is concerned, Sean McDermott, if you win the coin toss in this game, please go on defense first in this game. We saw what happened last week. Please go on defense first. But in all seriousness, no, the Bills, we talked about Seattle being -7 -3, 7th worst in turnover differential. The Bills are first in the NFL at +10. So we're talking about this Bills defense been able to take the ball away this year and protect it themselves. Seattle hasn't been great on the turnover differential side. So as far as the Bills defense, you want to make sure that when we go back to in tomorrow's show, and we start looking at our data tracking that we do every Monday, we really hope to see that the Bills won the turnover battle because the trend going into this game is that the Bills should win the turnover battle. Now, it's in Seattle. I get that. It's going to be tough. Bills have been really good about it. These things tend to have a way to even themselves out, but really try, if you can, to not give Seattle something that they haven't been able to do this year, and that's turnover differentials. So got to keep trying to take 1 or 2 away here if you're the Bills defense, and they did a good job against Tennessee last week in doing that. changing a little bit of a momentum. That would be huge on the road for this Bills defense if they could get a takeaway or two in this one.
Carl Thumman coming to the super chat says, "Do you see Joe Andreessen getting playing time today?" Yeah, on special teams. Unfortunately for the Buffalo, for anyone who wants to see Joe Andreessen, I don't think he's going to supplant Balin Spector because he hasn't to this point on the depth chart. So unless Balin Spector comes out there and completely poops his pants, I don't think you're going to see a guy like Joe Andreessen get put into the game. If you're thinking, well, Seattle has a really good ground game, maybe they'll go some 3 linebacker sets. They're just not taking Taron Johnson off the football field. They took Taron Johnson off the field once in that Titans game. It was like the first play after the half or whatever. First play, like there was just one. I can't remember when it was. I'm blanking. But they took Taron Johnson off the field, and the play-by-play guy was like, Terrell Bernard is off the field. But no, Terrell Bernard was on the field. They subbed in Balin Spector and went 3 linebackers and took Taron Johnson off the field one time. And it was when Chiganganku had that big, like 30-yard reception because they play actioned and just hit him when he burned Balin Spector in pass coverage. So I just don't envision a world where the Buffalo Bills are taking Taron Johnson off the field. If they did try to do that, I think Joe Andreessen might be a better third linebacker than Nicholas Morrow in run stuffing situations. So if the Bills ever had to consider that, that's what you should consider. So maybe goal line Joe Andreessen gets into the game. But I really am not expecting Buffalo Joe to get much playing time, barring injury or Balin Spector crap in his pants, unless it's on special teams.
If Andreessen's getting meaningful defensive snaps in this game, something went wrong. Either an injury or something went wrong.
Yeah.
And I like him. Like, I'm not trying to disparage.
100%.
I'm just saying, like, that's not what you want, I don't think, if you're the Bills in this game.
Looking at some other matchups, we mentioned at the top of the show, and we'll get back to it now, the defensive line, Gregory Rousseau versus Mike Jarrell. That's a matchup. If he can be effective early in the game, they have to that takes Noah Fant out of the passing game because he might have to stay in line to block. That could open things up on the other side for guys like Dwayne Smoot and AJ Epinesa. So that sort of has an effect on the game if Gregory Rousseau can step up and win that matchup and dominate that matchup with Mike Jarrell. But the interior is very interesting as well. And I think the Buffalo Bills, and this is a tough ask now with Dwayne Carter out, but we need the interior defensive line to come alive a little bit. Ed Oliver is 48th in the NFL right now in pass rush productivity. That's the best on the team. 48th of all the qualifying DTs. That's the best on the team. Everyone else is below that. Seattle has given up the 6th most pressures to interior defensive linemen. This is where a struggling Buffalo Bills interior pass rush needs to step up their game today. And I also wouldn't be upset if Bobby Babich decides to maybe put a little bit of interior pressure like on steroids in this game by manufacturing some pressure with getting guys like Balin Spector or Dorian Williams on some A-B gap blitzes in this game. We haven't seen a lot of it, but I wouldn't mind it. Trying to get and force Geno out of the pocket.
Yeah, you have to get pressure on Geno today. He's been sacked the 4th most of any quarterback in the league. He's been sacked 20 times. Only quarterbacks sacked more than him are Deshaun Watson, Sam Darnold, and Daniel Jones. So you need to get to Geno Smith. You need to bring him down, whether it's with pressure through the A-gaps on blitzes. Dorian Williams, maybe we see a little bit of that out of him.
Guy's a cannon.
He's a cannon. And then, like we said, on the edges, Gregory Rousseau and AJ Epinesa need to get home today, or at least affect Geno in the pocket. He's been sacked 20 times already this season, 4th most, like I just said. You have to create some negative plays for this Seattle team on offense. Put them behind the sticks. Don't let them have 3rd and shorts, 3rd and 4 or less. I know this Bills team has struggled defending 3rd and long. So I'm not I'm not saying it's a gimme, but the Seahawks are a bottom half of the NFL team in 3rd down conversion percentage, 38.4, just outside the top half, only 5 for 10 on 4th downs this year. So get them in those long down and distances, create some negative plays, sack Geno Smith. Even if you don't get those turnovers we just mentioned about, get him pressured, sack him. And as Brendan says here, get him pressured, force him to roll out and pass.
It's a great comment, right? If you get him out of the pocket, that takes the middle of the field away.
Yep.
It funnels him to the boundary. It funnels him to where the Buffalo Bills are the strongest. That's a great comment there from Brendan P. The other sort of storyline for the Buffalo Bills interior, it's not just, getting interior pressure. It's also about the run defense as well. The
Mhm.
last time the Bills suffered a defensive tackle injury, they brought in Branson Dean sort of as a three-tech replacement for Ed Oliver, and things didn't go so well for the Buffalo Bills defensively against the Houston Texans, at least not early in that football game. They make the decision in this game not to go with Branson Dean, but to go with Eli Anku. So maybe Zion Logue plays in this game too. And they maybe go 5 DTs to try to match up with Kenneth Walker. But I think it says something about how the Bills feel about their defensive tackle depth that Logue and Dean aren't getting the call. It's Ilianku, a guy who's been here for a long time, a guy who's always sort of just been solid, sort of blended in. But you're not going to expect many splash plays from a guy like Ilianku today, but he's just got to have that gap integrity, and he's got to do his 111th year, which is something I think the Bills maybe feel like Logan Dean failed to do when they had their shot against Houston.
Yeah, and I think this is a bit of a trust thing as well. A guy like Anku who has played games for the Bills, up and down from the practice squad to active roster, has games under his belt, has been adequate and solid at times that he's been in real game action. So I think, going on the road, knowing they're down Dwayne Carter, the Bills, I think, are going with the guy that they probably trust in this situation more than they trust guys like Dean and Logue. So that's not a big surprise to me.
Last little bit here on Seattle's offense with DK Metcalf likely out. Where do they go in the passing game? Expect JSN to get the number one target share. I know they also have Tyler Lockett, but to me, Tyler Lockett's always sort of been their like big play auxiliary number two guy that's sort of fed off of what DK Metcalf brings to the table. So I
Mhm.
kind of expect JSN to be the biggest sort of benefactor of DK Metcalf's absence, but I've actually watched a ton of Seattle games this year. I really I liked Jake Bobo coming out in the pre-draft process as a late round receiver. Expect him to play a little bit more today. He's got some size to him. And I guess I slept on this guy in the pre-draft process. He's been playing very, very well for Seattle. Outside of Noah Fant, they also have a guy from Michigan. How do you sleep on a guy from Michigan? I don't know. But AJ Barner's had a very good season for Seattle, both as a run blocker, Michigan guy, spec that, right? And as a pass catcher. He's made some big plays for them. So AJ Barner could be like a sleeper player, or Jake Bobo could be a sleeper player that could make some plays for the Seattle offense today.
Yeah, Bobo's made a few plays already this year for them at times. And I think that, again, the Titans had 2, 3 tight ends involved in their passing attack last week and had some success with some layups, right, to tight ends on some of those misdirection plays to guys like Wiley, Chig. We mentioned that. And so
Mhm.
Fant, Barner, like, not going to surprise me if both of those guys make contributions today. Tyler Lockett, he still has some juice left in him. We all envisioned that JSN was going to kind of be the heir apparent to a guy like Tyler Lockett because we weren't sure if Tyler Lockett was even going to be back with Seattle this offseason. A lot of talk about him maybe being a cap casualty, and they bring him back, and I bet they're happy to still have him now because while JSN and Lockett's skill sets are somewhat similar, obviously Lockett is probably going to be more of the downfield threat in this game, and JSN is going to likely work the middle of the field. JSN is leading the Seahawks in catches this year, and he's only 5 targets behind DK on the season. So he is going to be sort of that number one option for them over the middle of the field in this passing game. And he is a guy with a volume that can really frustrate you as a defense, picking up 7, 8 yards at a time. He's not going to necessarily be the biggest yards per catch guy, but if he's converting a lot of third downs and he's picking up 7, 8 yards a catch, it's going to be frustrating for this Bills defense because he's a great route runner. And the Bills, Taron Johnson, I think, is a huge factor now in this game, like you said. And so tall task for him, a great matchup, Taron Johnson against JSN.
All right, let's shift our focus now to our pre-game superlatives. As always, every single week, we give some lighthearted predictions on what we think is going to happen in this football game, and we give out some pregame superlatives. We're going to start, as we always do, with our Take Me Higher player of the game. This is a star Buffalo Bills player that we think needs to have a big game in order for the Buffalo Bills to defeat the Seattle Seahawks. Now, before, Dave, I let you give your prediction here or your superlative here, I want to make sure for anyone who's new in the comment section or anyone new who's viewing this show, none of us are going to say Josh Allen, and that's okay because Josh Allen is exempt. We're not allowed to use Josh Allen for the purposes because that is a given. So, Dave, outside of Josh Allen, who is one Buffalo Bills big name player who needs to step up today and take the Bills higher?
I'll say spin in the comment section is we're on the same wavelength today. For me, it's Dalton Kincaid. I think you look at the DVOA, Seattle 21st against the tight end. They've struggled covering the middle of the field. Kyle Pitts last week, 65 yards and 7 catches. George Kittle the week before, 55 plus yards, 2 touchdowns against the Seattle defense from the tight end position. Dalton Kincaid by 1 yard had his highest yardage output of the season last week, and you'd like to think that he can clear 52 yards receiving today, I hope, and have his biggest yardage game of the season. You saw a little bit of fire out of Dalton Kincaid with one of those angry run after the catches early last week in that game, and then only 3 catches on the day. I'd like to see that double at least today. I think it's a big day for Dalton Kincaid over the middle of the field. Keep those chains moving for the Bills. A little bit of physicality to the game as well that I think the Bills need to bring. I like that. So I'll say Dalton Kincaid is my take me higher player for today.
Got Brendan P coming in saying Ed Oliver has to take me higher. I like that one as well. Sword Brother Joseph comes in and says no Creed higher. And then Spin coming at me saying Judge chickened out with the copyright claims. Listen, we are a small part of the much larger picture here at the Cover One Sports Network, and us getting copyright claimed for the use of Creed has bigger, larger ramifications than just this show. So we unfortunately can no longer use that, even though our guy Luke Russert was trying to tell us that under 8 seconds it should have been fine. So I don't understand what the issue is. I don't know. Fine. But here we are. My take me higher player of the game is going to be on the defensive side of the football. I'm going with Gregory Rousseau. Give me back-to-back dominating performances. You want something beyond that 5th-year extension. You want a new contract, Gregory Rousseau. Go out there and earn it today in Seattle, going up against a 6th-round pick in Mike Jarrell. Get them to allocate a tight end to you. Get George Fant or A.J. Barner out of the passing game because they have to double you. Open things up for Ed Oliver. Open things up for Smoot and Epinesa because you are thriving and you are dominating that matchup against Mike Jarrell. That is what Gregory Rousseau needs to do today in order for the Buffalo Bills to be successful. All right, on now to our pre-game wildcard predictions. All right, Dave, who is your wild card player of the game, a surprise Buffalo Bills player who is going to step up and either have a good game or make a play here or there to make the difference for the Buffalo Bills today against the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah, last week I picked Ty Johnson as my wild card player. He got that touchdown. I think at this point, Ray Davis is above wild card status for me. I don't know that I can really consider him a wild card player anymore, but I'll tell you who I can consider a wild card player whose dollars contract to wild card player status ratio is quite wide, and that's Dawson Knox, going from one of the highest paid players on the team to becoming wild card territory. And I just went with Dalton Kincaid as my take me higher. So what you can see here, people, is what I'm going with is the tight ends need to be involved today for the Bills. Please show me that Dawson Knox can at least get some utility out of that contract we're paying him. I think it's a good matchup for both Kincaid and Knox. Knox in the red zone. Maybe he finds the end zone today. Maybe Kincaid's the guy with the yardage and the catches, but wouldn't surprise me if you see at some point Dawson Knox 1 catch, 8 yards, and a touchdown. That could be a big factor in this game as a wild card. So continuing my trend here, moving from Kincaid to Knox, I'll go with Knox as my wild card player.
We got Brendan P coming in saying IK in Poly is the true wild card today. He signs a 1-day contract to play against it. That's a throwback right there. And that's just Geno Smith, the ageless wonder. The fact that EJ Manuel is now like calling games for the ACC network and Geno Smith is balling out in Seattle. It's kind of crazy how time flies. I'm going to go with the true wild card this week. A guy we mentioned once at the top of the show when we talked about injuries, and that's Jalen Virgil. The practice squad wide receiver taking the place of Curtis Samuel. I don't know if he's going to play a lot, but I mean, this is a guy who's 6'2". He's got 4.4 speed, 3 career return touchdowns at Appalachian State. The Buffalo Bills poached him from Denver for a reason, convinced him to come to the Bills practice squad as opposed to staying in Denver. All reports were Denver wanted to keep him. They were upset that he left. His first career play a couple of years ago was a 66-yarder for a touchdown. If you type his name into the Twitter search engine, another big play he made was a jet sweep that he took for like 25, 30 yards. So he might only touch the ball once or twice, but I think he capitalizes on his opportunity. And I think Jalen Virgil makes one toxic differential play today. Like I think he has one 16-plus yard play today. It might be his only touch, but whether it's a jet sweep or whether it is a pass reception, I think Jalen Virgil makes one big play in today's game.
This is a true wild card pick. So I like that pick from you. And we need to make sure we have the clip ready for when he does make a big play today.
Charles Youth, another one that I like, Brandon Condrington. I said his name right this time.
Yeah.
Brandon Condrington. He's been having a heck of a season for the Buffalo Bills. And if he makes a play on special teams, that could be huge for the Buffalo Bills in this game. All right. Up next is our Respect You player of the game. All right. Who, Dave, is one player or multiple players from the Seattle Seahawks team that the Buffalo Bills need to respect in order to win this football game?
I mean, it's really hard not to say Kenneth Walker here. I've been talking about him the whole show. I really like Kenneth Walker. I think he's due for a bigger yardage game than he's been having. 46 yards per game averaging so far on the ground this year for Walker. No Dwayne Carter. The Bills got to come up with a way to slow down that Seattle running game. They kept Tony Pollard to under 4 yards a carry last week after the Bills finally got going and forced them into some negative game script. I think it's going to be really important to force Seattle into a passing game script in this game. As much as the middle of the field may be open for the passing game, I think you got to try to take Kenneth Walker out of this game, at least in the running game, if you can, to try to give your defense a chance on some 3rd and long situations. So for me, it's definitely KW3, Kenneth Walker.
Yeah. I'm going to actually go to the defensive side of the football. And this is a player that I really wish the Buffalo Bills at some point would have pursued when he was a free agent, because I think he is a really good and underrated talent. And that's Julian Love in that Seattle Seahawks secondary. I think he's a ball hawk. If Josh Allen were to throw his first interception of the season today, I think Julian Love is going to be the one on the receiving end of that pick. Julian Love is a ball hawk in the middle of that Seattle defense. He's a very, very good safety. When he was a free agent with the Giants, I really wanted the Buffalo Bills to pursue him to roam center field to be Micah Hyde's replacement. Fortunately, the money for the Buffalo Bills just wasn't there at the time. But Julian Love is a really good football player. I think the Buffalo Bills need to be aware of where he is because he can make plays ball hawking from center field.
Yeah, love Julian Love in that free agent class. Definitely wanted him. He's athletic too. Like he will make his ball skills and body control are really underrated in the NFL. Like one of the better body control safeties in the NFL.
Yeah,
you go and watch
some of his interceptions are wild.
Yeah.
All right. Next is our hottest take from this game. All right. We are not the hot take artists in the Bills Mafia content creation game. But if we were to make a hot take, what is your hot take for this game, Dave?
Yeah, my hot take for this game is I'm going with one that I actually used earlier this season, but I think it's applicable to this game as well. And it's going to be really important for the Bills defense. And that is this Bills defense gets 5 sacks on Geno Smith today. I think He's been sacked, like we said, 4th most in the NFL. No DK Metcalf's going to put pressure on Geno if the Bills can force him out of the pocket and throw into the edges, as one of the comments said. But I think more importantly, Greg Rousseau building off that solid game he had last week. AJ Epinesa coming along, right? Having some good plays in the last few games. This Bills defense needs to take Geno to the ground. And I say 5 sacks for the Bills defense today against Geno Smith.
We got Spin coming in saying Kincaid and Coleman both break 100 yards. Sword Brother Joseph saying Ray Davis 150 total yards, 2 touchdowns. Brendan P 200 yards rushing, 100 yards passing. And then Roy Collins coming in and saying Judge's warm take moment incoming. Tell me, Dave, if you think, in comment section, I want you to tell me whether you think this is a warm take or a hot take. I think by the end of the game today, Ray Davis outgains James Cook. I think total yardage wise, Ray Davis has more yards than James Cook. I think at some point in this game, the Bills are going to go to Ray Davis. I think Ray Davis is going to be extremely effective, and I think they're going to ride the hot hand, and Ray Davis is going to outgain James Cook. The backup running back is going to outgain the starting running back. I think that's a pretty hot take. I don't know. What do you think? Spin says it's a nice cool take. It's a nice cool take.
Let's talk about peppers here, right? So you got like bell peppers, like the least spicy, and then you got like a scorpion pepper. This is definitely like more towards the bell.
This is the Frank's Red Hots of
this is the mild. This is mild buffalo sauce, for sure.
All right,
everyone. I mean, I think it's not okay. I will say this. I think in maybe in any other game or any other matchup, or if James Cook hadn't still been maybe coming back, like he's not on the injury report, but like you still wonder about that toe a little bit. I think this is a game where it actually maybe is more likely that Ray Davis outgains James Cook. So I will say maybe save that one for another.
Well, it's applicable, right? Like it's applicable to this game. That's why I chose that. I don't want to end up like Adam Shine, who was on CBS Sports like pregame show or whatever, when they asked him for a hot take for Bills Texans. He said that Josh Allen was going to not only recreate but top his New England Patriots wildcard game performance. And it goes 9 for 26. Josh Clark says Alec Anderson outgains Dawson Knox. Can we take a moment before we get to our pregame predictions to talk about what an absolute vibe Alec Anderson is? I don't know if anyone saw him at the Sabres game, ringing the gong and then ripping his shirt off and chugging a beer. Like Alec Anderson is 100% a vibes guy. He's 100% a dog. Like we talk about dogs on the show a lot. We got rid of the dog intro, but if we still had it, like Alec Anderson, he'd be a dog, right? So to me, again, I put this out there on social media and I got flamed for it because the Bills are consistently winning. And when you're consistently winning, you don't make changes like this. But David Edwards is on a short-term contract. I think Alec Anderson could be carving out a future for himself as left guard of the Buffalo Bills because he fits the vibes. He fits the vibes.
I mean, we said that during training camp, right? Like he could be a guy that would push, if anywhere on the line, we could maybe push David Edwards out, but Spin says Alec Anderson, Spencer Brown must be really.
Dude, those two are 2 peas in a pod, dude. Like you want dudes like that on your offensive line, just unbelievable.
Absolutely.
All right, let's close it out here now with our pregame prediction. All right, Dave, paint a picture for us. How's this game going to turn out?
I will say, I think the Bills will try to start running the ball early in this game. I think that they will lose the coin toss. They will end up getting the ball first, and we'll see a very quick 3 and out on the first drive. Would not surprise me. Trying to run the ball a bit ineffective in the beginning against Byron Murphy and crew, but I think they will stick with the run game in this one, and I think ultimately they will realize if they can stick with this running game, that may be their best formula for success in this. And they will have their chances to make some plays in the passing game with Kincaid and maybe Knox in the red zone. Cooper another weekend. Coleman, maybe not having the best. Like I think Cooper is probably going to get matched up with a lot of Tariq Woolen today. And I think this Bills defense will give up a lot of yards today. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's going to be roses for this defense, but I think they'll do enough to keep the Bills in this game and I think it comes down to what I mentioned before, and that's the turnover differential. The Bills are going to give up yards in this game. The Bills are going to give up points in this game. But if they can kind of stick to that trend, leading the league in turnover differential, Seahawks near the bottom in turnover differential, if they can play a clean game, run the ball effectively as the game moves on, then they can win this game. I'll say Bills 24, Seattle 20.
It's interesting, right? I do think if the Buffalo Bills are going to win this game, I think it's going to be in a shootout. Like I think you want Geno Smith to be passing the ball like 50 plus times like he did in that game against Detroit. You really want to force Seattle out of the running game. And I think if you're the Buffalo Bills, you need to get off to a hotter start. If the Buffalo Bills don't get off to a hot start, uh, I don't think you can overcome the Seattle Seahawks like you overcame the Tennessee Titans. I just don't think that's something that's going to happen. I'm actually thinking back to sort of the clip that Buffalo Bills social media team released of sort of the Buffalo Bills post game locker room talk last week. Sean McDermott gave the game ball to Josh Allen for his 100th career start, and Josh Allen went and he gave kind of a speech to the defense, and he said, "Hey, defense, thank you for carrying us that first half. We finally woke up. Like we're not going to let you down again." Like some comment in relation, something similar to that. I'm summarizing here, and just the way that he said it made me think like Josh Allen's gonna be locked the fuck in this week, and he's gonna come out and he's really gonna make sure that this offense gets off to a hotter start. So I will say that the Buffalo Bills outduel the Seattle Seahawks in what is going to be an offensive game. Bills 27, Seattle 23. I think no Terrell Bernard is going to really, really, really affect this defense. And if the offense does not, like I said, step up, it could be a long day for the Buffalo Bills, especially going out west. You could have some of that jet lag, all that stuff like comes into effect. The weather, like just
It's
it's not
uncomfortable.
it's an uncomfortable game. Yeah,
Yes, it's
you're right.
uncomfortable. It is.
So this is probably one of the least confident predictions I've made in a while. I think I texted our group chat with Kyle and Casey this week, and I said, if I were ever going to pick the Bills to lose, this might be one of the weeks where I do it. Like as a Bills fan, I don't like to pick the Buffalo Bills to lose. I usually always try to have a positive game prediction, but hopefully, as Josh Clark comes in here, hopefully it does not come down to Tyler Bass. Tyler Bass in that weather in Seattle in Lumen Field for a game-winning kick, like that would be some anxiety-inducing shit right there.
Yeah, no kidding. And it's funny, the Bills have had two former Seattle kickers then come to the Bills, right? Lindell was a Seahawk, I believe, before he was on the Bills, and then Hauschka was a Seahawk before he came to the Bills. So maybe Bass gets a little bit of a, proxy narrative to those Seattle kickers that came to the Bills, and maybe he does become the hero in this game. Let's hope he's not the opposite.
Before we head out of here, Tom Brady, Buffalo Bills getting Tom Brady on the play-by-play. Are you looking forward to that? We know him and Josh are tight. Like it'll be maybe really interesting to hear some of Tom Brady's commentary on Josh Allen, maybe some inside stories he has to share. Not that he's allowed to talk to Josh Allen anymore because he co-owns the Raiders, but like it'll be really interesting to see the perspective Tom Brady has towards Josh Allen and Josh Allen's play, and the analysis that he has, obviously, of Josh Allen's play, and maybe he has some inside stories to tell, because we know that the two of them are, I don't want to say like relatively tight, like they hang out all the time, but I'm sure that the two of them interact pretty regularly in the off season. We've seen it through things like the match and stuff, and I'm sure they're at very similar events as one another. So it'll be interesting, just some of the stories he's going to tell and the analysis he's going to give with Josh Allen.
Yeah, I think Brady, he seems to be getting a little bit more comfortable and better each week. In that seat. I do find it interesting how Fox has like made their own commercials just for Tom Brady as a commentator. Like, I guess if you're the GOAT, then you get that type of treatment. Never saw that for any other color commentator before, but Brady's getting
they're
that.
So cringeworthy too. Like they're uncomfortable.
He's like, I'm ready. I'm like, okay, bro. Like, I get it. So I'm looking forward to it just because it's something different, and we'll see kind of like what Brady says about Allen. But yeah, I think as a commentator, I think he's getting a little better each week. And it'll be fun to hear Brady talk about Allen for sure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning for Breakfast with the Bills and a little early pregame show. And for those of you who think it's too early for you, it's only 6:10 a.m. here for me. I was up at 3:45 this morning getting everything ready for this show. So the sacrifices I make, Dave, the sacrifices I make.
We appreciate that.
Last week I overslept. We had to start a half hour late, but we're not going to talk about that. But thank you guys. It would really help if you could smash that like. Always appreciate that. And there's obviously still a pretty decent amount of time until game day. And I don't think that there is a more early morning game
Not
this year. So this week. So if you could hit that share button, share on social media, text a friend, text family, email, whatever, however it is you communicate, write the link down, send it in carrier pigeon for all we care. Let the people know what we got going on here at Cover One and at the Air Raid Hour. And if you joined late, catch the early parts of the show on demand here on the replay. And thank you guys so much. As always, you guys drive the conversation, and we really appreciate having you guys in here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. For a morning, everyone was pretty on fire in the comments section today, especially roasting you about your hot take. So people were paying attention, I'll say. People were paying attention this morning. So thank you all. It's going to be not quite as long as waiting for the Sunday night, but 4:05 kick today. So we got to wait a little while for that one. So enjoy the day, and thank you all.
Yeah. All right. Until next time. And by next time, I mean tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!